Hello. I don't think anyone could deny that these are strange and challenging times indeed. So much so that I can't work from my normal studio. So, for the next few videos, I hope you'll forgive me not appearing all the way through. That may be a bonus, as much as a drawback, but you'll get my audio and you'll get my normal slides, plus a contact point where you can raise any questions. I hope you still enjoy the videos, and once we're through this crisis, I look forward to rejoining you from the usual spot. Welcome to this Kilic Explains video. This week, a key topic, which is why the best advisors should get to know their customers properly. Keyword at the end there, properly, which I'm going to come back to. Now, what's the background to this topic? Well, in essence, when you visit a professional such as a doctor or dentist, you'd expect them to find out a few things about you before launching into any treatments. These are common sense things: your medical history, your health overall, and your treatment preferences. Are you the kind of person that's interested in cosmetic dentistry, for example, or do you just want your teeth to carry on working? And there's no right answer to that question. It is very much down to personal preferences. So if you'd expect someone to ask lots of sensible questions before they treat you medically, why would you not expect somebody else to ask lots of sensible questions on an equivalent level before you hand over your money to them or trust them to give you financial advice? So what should they be asking you about in order to do investment management, financial planning, or a bit of both properly? And the answer is there are two or three key buckets. First of all, there's personal information. Now, in addition to the anti-money laundering requirements, which ask them to ascertain who you are, where you live, where your money comes from, some key details like that, in order to actually advise you, they ought to be understanding your objectives, your goals, your knowledge of the market and experience in particular asset classes, and also your overall risk appetite, very crudely ranging from high down to low. And you need to talk to somebody really to tease out exactly where they are in terms of objectives, knowledge, experience, and risk appetite. Then there's financial information, and that's usually about your income, your expenditure, and your assets. And I'll come back to those three subcategories in just a moment. Now, this all makes practical business sense, if you like. This is somebody trying to find out about me in order to give me the right advice, but it's also a requirement. The regulator in the UK, the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, has its conduct of business rules and is, at the moment, still acting within the shadow of an EU directive called MiFID II. Now, why find out about your finances? Some people are fairly comfortable with the first bucket I talked about, the personal information, but start to wonder why it is that an advisor wants to know about my financial position. Well, in a nutshell, finding out about my income tells an advisor how much risk there is in that income source. So if I was to consider three very different sources, if my income comes from a defined benefit pension scheme, for example, it could be considered fairly safe, fairly steady. If, on the other hand, it comes from a rental property, that's slightly more risky. There is a possibility of voids, rent can change, for example. Or perhaps it comes from a very small, concentrated portfolio of shares, and I'm relying very heavily on dividends as my main source of income. And those three different types of income carry very different risk profiles. Now, expenditure, perhaps on, say, a monthly basis, will help to plan a couple of things at least. One is a rainy day fund. That is the amount of money you'd want set aside in case things go wrong. That could be anything from losing a job, to falling ill, to simply needing to repair the roof short term, without liquidating any of your long-term lifetime savings. And then there are those foreseeable calls on capital. That is, outgoings, which can range from paying school fees in advance, saving up a deposit on a property, for example, funding the wedding for a child. All of these things have amounts of money attached to them, and if they're within a certain time range, you want to make sure that your asset allocation is appropriate so that when you hit the date where you need the money, you're not faced with a shortfall. And finally, assets. This will tell an advisor about your overall financial security and what MiFID II refers to as your capacity to absorb losses. So whilst it might seem a little bit intrusive to ask about all of these things in relation to your finances, they're actually pretty important. Now, is there anything else that an advisor might usefully find out in the course of gathering this information? Well, yes. If they understand my tax position, for example, then they can help to make sure that my investing and any related planning is done tax efficiently. Make sure I'm making the most of tax-free allowances and so on. Not just for me, but between, for example, me and my spouse or across the whole family. Then there's the you need to know what you don't know problem. In other words, by understanding my financial position, an advisor might identify gaps or hidden risks. So perhaps, for example, my asset allocation is way too concentrated. Perhaps I'm part of an employee share scheme and I haven't realised that actually I've tied too much of my financial future up with one company. And that's quite important when it comes to tolerance for absorbing losses and so on. And the clearer and more detailed the brief, the better the advice you're likely to receive. So more is better at the end of the day when it comes to somebody trying to then steer me into the right investment management or planning solution. Now a few closing thoughts. So, first of all, although know your customer, as the regulator calls it, can feel a bit intrusive to some people, particularly when it starts to get into income, expenditure and assets, it's actually pretty key. Not only is it a regulatory requirement, but it does enable an advisor to actually do a better job for their customers. So it should, in theory, be a win-win-win. You're happy, your advisor's happier advising you, and the regulator is satisfied. Any questions on quite a meaty topic, editor@killick.com. And if you'd like to watch videos on related topics, I mentioned, for example, money laundering as we travelled through this one, then it's killick.com/learn.